All right, we're back. Welcome to another episode of Around the 412, a fantasy football podcast. I'm your host, Smitty. With me again, we're back, man. It's Donnie Druin.
We're back. What'd you say about Saquon?
Saquon came back. He got hurt and came back from a high ankle sprain quicker than I was able to come back from bronchitis / bronchial pneumonia / displaced ribs.
We love a king. Welcome back.
So, yeah, it's so disappointing what happened when we did our last podcast because, I was so excited to get back. And I was so excited to, just get back to podcasting in general. But I was like, getting back doing the live podcast on Twitch, the interaction with people and everything like that. And then OBS on Herb's computers decided that's not going to happen. You guys just have to record the podcast and put it out. So, unfortunately, we were only able to do the podcast itself, not able to do the live show. So, this is the first time I'm back in front of a camera. People are able to see me. But anyway, I know my voice sounds a little different still, so every day it's getting a little better, getting a little stronger, but I'm still definitely not 100%. There's no more pneumonia in my lungs, though, so that's good. But anyway, quick little story for everybody that wasn't able to tune in on Tuesday. On September 20th, that's how long it's been since I first was found out that I had this. The first day that I had this. Just couldn't stop coughing. It was whatever. I didn't really think anything of it. I'm the type of person that gets over things in 24 hours. So I just thought it was I'll go to sleep, I'll wake up, I'll be fine. This wasn't going away. Finally went to MedExpress. They told me, it might be bronchitis. It's definitely not anything that's an infection or anything like that. So we don't want to put you on an antibiotic. The chest X-ray came back negative, so they just put me on a steroid. That did nothing. So I spent a week pretty much not healing, just getting worse. Went to urgent care. Kind of the same thing happened, essentially. They just said I probably wasn't using my inhaler correctly, didn't want to give me an antibiotic, etc., etc. So got kind of prescribed the same stuff except cough syrup with an antihistamine, which that helped. It made me go to sleep, but it really wasn't helping with the pneumonia itself. Finally, the only reason I went to the emergency room was because I coughed and felt a pop in my ribs. And I was like, wow, that's not normal. And it was painful. Something I've never felt before.
Did you physically hear a pop?
Yeah, I heard a pop. I don't know if anybody else would have heard a pop if they were around me or if it was just internally I heard a pop, but I literally heard it. So I tried to put it off for a couple hours, and then I was in so much pain I was actually crying. And I'm not somebody that cries from pain. So I went to the emergency room, and thank God that I did. I went for my ribs, not thinking anything more, because I actually thought that I was starting to get better. That wasn't the case, though. The guy asked if they could do a CT scan. I was like, absolutely. So they did it, and they found the pneumonia in my right lung. Finally, 3 chest X-rays, they found nothing. They finally did a CT scan, and that's when they found it. So they put me on an antibiotic, and the rest is kind of history. That was a week ago Sunday. So I'm finally back.
We can go.
Yeah. But my voice is still. I forget what I sound like when I'm 100%. I have to go back and listen to a podcast or something because I have no idea what I sound like.
I don't know. You sound more distinguished. You sound manlier with sexy.
So maybe I should just keep this. Maybe I should try to keep it then.
Oh yeah. Just kind of stay sick for the rest of your life. That'll be great.
Okay, so. Couple things that I should mention before we start getting into the fantasy football stuff. We are part of the Pod Hub Network. The Pod Hub Network is a phenomenal podcast network with a ton of great podcasts that are part of it, growing each day. The motto is your podcast, your city. Right now, Pittsburgh and Jacksonville are the 2 cities that we are based in, but we're growing each day and growing together. That's the most important thing. It kind of has a family environment. So check out podhubnetwork.com. Go check out all the podcasts that are part of it. We are sponsored by Keats Barbershop. Keats Barbershop is an old-fashioned barbershop located at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. They're open from 10 to 7 Tuesday through Friday, Saturday 9 to 4. Tuesday's the day to go, though. Everyone knows that. We've decided. Why? Because you get $5 off if you're military personnel, first responder, or a nurse. So Christian himself, the owner, served in the military, so it's important for him to do that. He loves giving back any way he can. And he's also starting November 1st until December 20th, he's doing a toy drive. And if you bring a toy of some sort, obviously unopened, you get $5 off your haircut. So just another way that Christian's giving back. And then, of course, we, as Around the 412, are doing Rocking Around the 412 again this year. It's year 2. The pinned tweet on our Twitter will take you right to the GoFundMe link. Please read and share it. I understand, it's not always easy at Christmas time, and that's exactly what this mission's for, so I'm not going to, say donate, but I encourage you to at least read and share the mission. It's something that's very important to us. Essentially, what we're doing this year is giving kids who wouldn't have the Christmas that they deserve otherwise, from financial reasons, the ability to do so. So we're going to buy kids of less fortunate families Christmas gifts this year. Once again, that pinned tweet is on our Twitter. It'll take you to the GoFundMe, and you can obviously donate right there, but I have a little mission statement as well that I encourage everybody to read. So, other than that, I think we're ready to jump into some fantasy football for Week 7.
Sounds great, man. Let's do it.
All right, so the Steelers are on a bye, so this week for me is strictly about fantasy football. I don't have to worry about the Steelers winning or losing. I'm not going to be on the edge of my seat. I just can worry about my fantasy football games, all 4 of them. And I am excited for this week, even without the Steelers playing.
Yeah, luckily, I don't have any stock in any Steelers player whatsoever, so I think that's a little bit better, and kind of hinging my hopes on, whether the question of who's going to be starting quarterback for Pittsburgh, or, whether or not Juju's finally going to step up. We talked about Juju for a little bit. I mean, fantasy-wise, he has been absent, like my father. He just hasn't been there for fantasy owners whenever it counts. Do you think it's could be like a problem going forward? Do you see him eventually clicking with Mason Rudolph and getting back on the same page? I mean, this Juju is being drafted like high 2nd round, early 3rd round for some leagues, and dude, he just has not produced. And the games he has been, long touchdowns have saved him.
Yeah. And I mean, he's being drafted where he was with Ben Roethlisberger there. Yeah. So, if Ben Roethlisberger, if we knew he was out for the season before the season started, you're knocking Juju down probably at least a full round. But if you look at the tape, he is getting open. It's really not so much a Juju problem. It's a quarterback getting the ball to Juju problem. Yeah. And, so that's why it's hard for me to even sit here and say what I originally felt about Juju's production, that he needed a second receiver to step up to kind of open things for him, like a Deontay Johnson, like a James Washington. At the beginning of the season, we had all had that hope for Dante Moncrief, but that hasn't come to fruition, at least yet. But at this point, I think it's more about the quarterback getting to the ball. I mean, Devlin Hodges only completed 15 passes on Sunday Night Football, only 1 to Juju. There's only Deontay Johnson caught 2. He was the only person not named James Conner to catch more than 2. So James Conner had 7. Other than that, it was 2, and then everybody else 1. So, I mean, that kind of shows you where the Steelers' offense is right now. For Juju, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say that I think he's going to turn it around, because I have to see it first. Yeah. I have to see the quarterback be able to give him the ball on a consistent basis to say that he's going to get back to the same production that he was last year, where you could bank on him to get close to 100 yards a game.
Right, yeah.
8 to 10 catches.
I think banking on him getting the production he had last year might be a little too far-fetched at this point. When you watch him play with Mason Rudolph, exactly like you pointed out, he's getting open. It's not necessarily a Juju problem, more so than Rudolph just not being on the same page with him. If you do go back and watch the film, you'll see that whenever Juju is getting open, they've been off the same page. Juju would run one route, for example, and then Rudolph would expect him to be running another route and throw the ball, and it looks like it's just, like I said, not even on the same page. So I think that'll have to gel with time if there is a chance for Juju to kind of reach wide receiver 1 status again. But certainly up to this point, he's got to be one of the biggest busts in fantasy drafts.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going by position, he's definitely got to be up there for the wide receiver position. Yeah. I see a lot of people talking about, O.J. Howard at the tight end position. And, I'd probably really have to sit there and think about biggest busts and studs by position, and maybe that's something that we'll do on the show as we wrap up the fantasy season later. But I mean, yeah, right now I think that you can make an argument that Juju's been the most disappointing at the receiver position without being injured, obviously.
I saw a list of I'm not sure who came out with that. I don't know if it was like Fantasy Pros or like another website, but it came out with like a top 10 list of fantasy busts this week. Antonio Brown was number 1.
I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, not injury related or not, anything off the football field related. Like, Juju's been out there every game, so it's just a production issue.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get it together.
hey, prime spot against Miami coming up. So
Ooh, true. Yeah, that's right.
if
Monday
it doesn't
Night
happen,
Football.
then I mean, especially off a bye week. So any well, that toe thing is probably going to linger with him. But I mean, this if he's going to have a big game, you would think that's going to happen on Monday Night Football at Heinz Field against the Dolphins.
Completely agree.
Okay, so I know that on this show we've kind of thrown in some random segments at times and stuff like that. This week coming back, we just kind of wanted to cover the basics with you guys. Top 5 by position, your waiver wires. Obviously, that it happens on Wednesday. We're recording on Thursday. The first game of the week starts in like 2 hours. But I mean, we're still going to do it for you guys. Studs and duds from last week, and then obviously like a must start at each position. Stuff that we've covered on here before. But obviously this is week 7 now, so whole new week. Probably a lot of familiar faces because you obviously have the staples, like the guy playing tonight at quarterback for Kansas City. But without further ado, we might as well just jump into it. We'll go top 5 quarterbacks for the week first. Me starting, I know Donnie can't see me, but I'm actually wearing a Patrick Mahomes shirt right now.
Really?
Yes. Patrick Mahomes. It's a jersey. Yeah, it's not a jersey, it's a jersey. Big jersey guy. I've kind of gotten more into the jerseys as well now. There was a time where I was just strictly a jersey guy, but I have a decent amount of jerseys. I have to send you a picture. I got a decent amount of jerseys now. But anyway, Pat Mahomes, I mean, you can lock him in every single week as a top 3 play at the worst, even against a Denver defense who probably should be better than what they've been. They've been a little bit better the last couple of weeks. The first 2 weeks were ridiculous for them. I mean, I know that Bradley Chubb isn't there now. He's out for the year. But, like, the first 2 games when he was healthy, Bradley Chubb and Von Miller to not record a sack is kind of ludicrous.
Right, yeah. And even going from just, like, focusing on, like, Broncos defense to, like, Chiefs offense, the last couple of weeks, Mahomes and company have not been producing like they should have been.
Right. Yeah, I mean, even, Tyreek Hill came back last week. And obviously Tyreek Hill had a fantastic fantasy game. But overall, the Chiefs, you can still see that there were some issues that carried over. They didn't look great against the Colts. He didn't look that great against Detroit either. See, what's going on in KC, but for me, it's too hard to keep him out of your top 3 plays. And to be honest with you, I got to put him at number 1 still this week. I know Thursday Night Football. It's probably come back to bite me. Like, I'm literally sitting here right now thinking, I'm really like an idiot. But Thursday Night Football, typically, a little lower scoring. I typically, I know this isn't a betting podcast, but it seems to always be the under that hits. Guys coming off a short week playing. And you kind of wonder about Pat Mahomes' ankle. Is that still lingering with him? But for me, he's still QB1 for this week. QB2. I like Russell Wilson. Baltimore's defense, I'm curious to see how different Marcus Peters makes that defense. But Baltimore's defense has been pretty bad for most of the season. Earl Thomas has not been what is expected of him. He looks like he's put on some weight. Like, visibly, he looks heavier. And I don't know. There's something about Russell Wilson right now. I don't know if you are on board with this, but right now I think he's my MVP.
Yeah, he's definitely in that conversation. I mean, I think you could float that MVP talk to a couple different people. I would even go as far as to call Wilson one of the dark horse MVPs because I'm not seeing him talked about in a lot of the MVP conversation this year. But he's been nothing short of phenomenal, given, I don't want to say the lack of receiving options in Seattle, just because they do have, in my opinion, solid receivers and Tyler Lockett, and I think DK Metcalf is starting to turn a little bit of a corner too. But yeah, it definitely helps when you can run the ball sufficiently as the Seahawks and have, one of the best quarterbacks in the league in Russell Wilson back there.
Yeah, and this is going to be the first week without Will Dissly, who was emerging as a tight end, especially at a weight position. I mean, he was a top 7 option weekly, especially, and that's, kind of a little bit of both because he was playing that well, but also obviously how little that position is. But Will Dissly was definitely coming into his own. He was a safety net for Russell Wilson, especially when you get into that red zone. So it will be interesting to see how different the offense might look with Luke Wilson being their top tight end option. But like you said, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf and even more, he was looking a lot towards against Cleveland. And we'll see if maybe he's a guy that benefits from Will Dissly being out. But as you mentioned too, Russell Wilson adds another dynamic with his legs. He's probably giving you 2 to 3 fantasy points just with his legs as well each week. So Russell Wilson, a guy to me that once again is probably going to be in my top 5 pretty much every week. That Baltimore Ravens defense hasn't technically been like the Baltimore Ravens defenses of old, at least yet. And Russell Wilson's my number 2 guy for that reason. Number 3, Deshaun Watson against the Colts. Another guy who, I don't know, do you think that Deshaun Watson, as of right now, deserves any consideration as an MVP candidate?
I mean, he certainly has to be up there. I mean, I'm actually looking at his fantasy points right now. So 4 out of 6 weeks so far, he scored over 30 fantasy points, one of those being over 50 fantasy points. So fantasy MVP, he's definitely got to be up there. But for NFL MVP, I think it's still kind of the same as Wilson. I mean, I feel like he might be a dark horse candidate. It always helps when you have DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best receivers in the league. Right. I think the Texans are a little cautious running the football, with Carlos Hyde and, Duke Johnson back there. But no, he's playing a lot better. If Will Fuller could get his act together, I think that would help the Texans offense a lot.
He scored 3 touchdowns and then could have scored 3 more the next week and dropped each one. But
shame.
Yeah, as a Will Fuller fantasy owner, you hate to see it. But that's the thing. It's just like the raw talent is so there, and if he does come into his own, like him and Hopkins together, wow.
Disgusting, yeah.
And then my last 2 guys, 4 and 5. Number 5 might actually surprise people. Number 4 is Lamar Jackson, playing against Seattle. Once again, as we mentioned with Russell Wilson, and even upgrade that more with what he adds with his legs. Because you're talking about this guy can run for over 100 yards, and he can pass for close to 200 in the same game. It's going to be interesting to see what Seattle does with him. Is Bobby Wagner going to spy him? But I still think that Lamar Jackson gets his on Sunday, and he's a top 5 play just due to the dual threat ability that he brings. And then my last one, which might be interesting to some people, because I know that most of the top 5 projections I was looking for this week had like Matt Ryan in here, maybe Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to go with another guy that adds points with his legs, playing against a bad defense. Kyler Murray against the Giants comes in at number 5. You talk about dual threat. He brings that. Arizona actually the best running team in football right now. I don't know how they're doing it, but they're doing it. Cliff Kingsbury's got them at least being able to run the football. And Kyler Murray, David Johnson going against a very bad New York Giants defense. They're probably going to be without Christian Kirk from what I'm seeing, but still the reliable Larry Fitz. And, maybe David Johnson goes out wide a little bit, and we see Edmonds in the backfield. I don't know what they're going to do. Either way, Kyler Murray to me comes in the top 5.
Yeah, it's actually funny because I have Murray ranked as the second quarterback coming into this week. So Murray's actually one of 3 quarterbacks that has at least scored 16 or 18 fantasy points every week. Murray's dual threat abilities have been coming along as the season has progressed. We saw it last week. Murray scored 28 points. He's a guy who plays in a creative offense with Cliff Kingsbury. He has the run support if needed, but also his running back, David Johnson, is one of the best pass-catching running backs in football. We're starting to see that develop underneath Cliff Kingsbury. It was only a matter of time before this Cardinals offense actually began to took off, and now we're starting to see Kyler Murray reap the benefits. You had mentioned Christian Kirk going out, but the Cardinals receiving depth is one of the best in the league as far as young talent goes. So like you mentioned, you had Larry Fitzgerald. Andy Isabella is a guy people out here in Arizona seem to really like. Mm-hmm. They have Keyshawn Johnson, a guy who's made a splash play here too. So definitely a lot of young guys that might be able to step up in Christian Kirk's absence. But yeah, I've Kyler Murray. I think he's on the road going against a bad New York Giants defense. Like I said, Ben, I think he's hit his ceiling. Sorry, not his ceiling, his floor. We know the bare minimum he can do, and like you compared him to Lamar Jackson. He's able to pick up points on the ground, and I would rather my quarterback score 1 point running 10 yards on the ground as opposed to 25 yards for passing. That being said, go ahead.
I should point out, too, that as of right now, I mean, things could change. As of right now, rain is in the forecast for that game against the Giants, so that could be even more run-heavy. And that could mean, Kyler Murray might not be throwing the ball as much because of that, but still, maybe a lot of option plays. He's running the ball even more because of that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but, yeah, I just wanted to point out rain is right now in the forecast.
Definitely, yeah. I feel like it's one of the more underrated aspects of fantasy football. It's just weather,
Thank God they throw that on the app because I wouldn't even think about it. But
yeah. But top 5 quarterbacks for me, Deshaun Watson is actually going to be number 1. Like I had mentioned, we've seen the numbers he can put up. I don't think Will Fuller can continue dropping balls like he has, so I think he does get his act together. Compare that with DeAndre Hopkins and the Texans going into a pivotal game against the Indianapolis Colts for first lead in the division. I think Watson's going to be able to put up numbers again. Like I mentioned, Kyler Murray is my number 2 quarterback. Josh Allen against the Miami Dolphins is number 3 for me. Talk about another guy that can pick up points, with his legs on the ground. Miami is always that kind of bye week for teams, it seems like. We've seen quarterbacks have tremendous games against the Dolphins, and I think that Buffalo might be able to do that again this week. Patrick Mahomes comes in for me at number 4. Like you had mentioned, you got to put him in. He's at bare minimum a top 5, if not top 3, like you had mentioned. And then Gardner Minshew is my QB5 this week going against the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think you notice the trend is, these guys all in my top 5 can pick up points with their legs. Gardner has been extremely impressive. DJ Chark has stepped up for him tremendously. Obviously you have Leonard Fournette, who might eat into a big chunk of the fantasy points, just for everybody in the offense. But until Garner starts, dipping in his play, I think you have to put him at least in the conversation, for top quarterbacks every week.
That's interesting. Oh, man. Your top 5 quarterbacks is either going to make you look like a genius or an idiot.
I'm going to go with the latter.
But as we were talking about before we started recording, it's kind of been like 50-50. For you, it's like for every one that you look like a genius. I'm the same way. Actually, it might be like 75-25. I look like an idiot. But
yeah, do you remember?
I think your conversion rate might be a little better. Huh?
You remember whenever we told Beefy to start Jameis?
Yeah.
I watched that man throw 5 interceptions, and he wasn't even in this country. Like fucking crazy.
Right, he threw for like 400 yards, but turned it over 6 times.
Yeah.
So I wonder, did he end up scoring more points than Stafford still, though?
Let me check, actually. Yeah.
Ryan came in here and said, who's the Smitty guy? Yeah, sorry, Ryan, you weren't replacing on this show as well.
Ooh. Clutch.
Maybe one day.
How did he do for you, by the way? I didn't get a chance to listen to that episode.
It was good. I was talking about it on Tuesday. That's like when it hit me how much I missed podcasting. Like, I was sitting there watching. I was like, oh, it's really cool that, like, Ryan's there, but I wish I was there.
So Winston actually scored 4 more points than Stafford did.
Really? Yeah, see? Yeah. So we were right. It's terrible that those were his options. But we were somehow still right.
Stafford only had 10 points that week.
Jeez.
Yeah, 265 yards, no touchdowns, no nothing.
Might have had more without the refs, but...
Ooh.
That's a different story.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, we have I'm happy about that top 5, though, because we actually have some differences. Typically, it's just, like a little bit of a difference in the order that we have guys. But, yeah, you have Minshew in there and Josh Allen, so at least 2 differences overall.
Yeah, we'll see. I tried to be bold. I tried to be, Devlin Hodges throwing to deep balls, so we'll see how it comes out.
Yeah. Okay, so running backs. This is where I feel like we're going to have a lot of the same guys. So Saquon's back going against Arizona. You got to lock and load him as number 1.
Yes, sir.
I expect him to have the same workload he would as if he didn't miss any time. Arizona is a pretty bad defense as well. I know that this is the week Patrick Peterson comes back. I don't think that really affects Saquon Barkley at all. And he's RB1 for me as long as he's healthy. So Saquon number 1. My guy, I got both my running backs as 1 and 2, and no, this isn't biased towards my team. Dalvin Cook against Detroit's my number 2. I know that Minnesota kind of went more pass-heavy this last week. I expect them to go back more towards the ground, or at least a pretty even split this week. That's what they like to do. I almost feel like they literally did that against Philly just for Kirk Cousins to get his revenge against Zach Brown, and then Zach Brown got cut anyway. So Kirk Cousins did have a great game, and I actually will touch on that later. But anyway, Dalvin Cook, my RB2 this week. Leonard Fournette against Cincinnati. As you mentioned, Leonard Fournette could eat into Gardner Minshew's production, and I fully expect it to happen against Cincinnati, who is absolutely atrocious against both the pass and run. But I want to see Leonard Fournette continue to be more involved as a pass-catching back because he can do it. And it seems like this year they're at least making an attempt to have that be the case. No TJ Yeldon there to take that duties away from him. So I expect this to be another week where he's kind of doing both and has a big day. Alvin Kamara against Chicago, not a good matchup by any means. And I know that there's actually some injury concern with him. But
he practice today. Yep.
This is my guy that, like, running back wise, he's just one of those guys for me that has to be in the top 5.
I agree, and like I'm a Kamara owner, so like obviously I'm still going to start him. But man, like, has he been so disappointing without Drew Brees there in that offense, man?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, for anybody that was listening to the beginning of the show, where we talked about Juju, is it really on Alvin Kamara, the lack of production, or can you attribute it to just losing your quarterback and the play dropping off because of that? But I don't know. Once again, this is a bad matchup, and I think that this is probably the guy for me that could very well not be in the top 5. Even though I have him ranked ahead of David Johnson, my number 5 against the Giants, I think that, at least 3 of these guys, I'm confident that they're going to be in the top 5.
Yeah.
Alvin Kamara is a guy that I could very well see not even being in the top 10 this week going against Chicago. But for me, as I sit here right now, I have to have him in my top 5 somewhere.
No, I completely agree. Kamara, you don't want to be burned by him, so you don't not want to put him, up there just because he is so talented, and he can't take it the distance anytime he touches the ball. So, I definitely understand. I actually don't have him in my top 5 though. I can't see it against the tough Chicago defense.
And see, I'm not a Kamara owner, so you have, that going for/against you, and that you've seen firsthand the lack of production where, obviously I'm looking at the numbers and everything before I put him in the top 5, but it hasn't burned me. So.
Yeah. No, definitely agree. And, like I said, he's still going to be in my lineup regardless. I'm not going to be the guy that sits your star and then a star goes out and, performs. I never like to be too cute whenever sending a lineup. Just roll your guys out and see what they do. But, top 5 running backs for me, Saquon, number 1. Welcome back, baby. Can't wait. Number 2, I actually agree with you. I had Dalvin Cook number 2 versus Detroit as well. I think last week was a product of Stephon Diggs opening his mouth and complaining. So, he got fed, and I think Minnesota kind of regressed a little bit more towards the running game this week, like you had mentioned. I have David Johnson, number 3, against the Giants. Like I mentioned before, a very bad Giants defense. David Johnson, one of the best pass-catching running backs in all of football. I have Leonard Fournette at number 4 against the Bengals. As long as Fournette is healthy, he's going to see 20 to 25 touches a game. Whether or not he scores, whether or not he catches a shit ton of passes, it's kind of dependent on the game flow. But I feel like you have a pretty decent safe floor with Fournette as long as he's healthy and he's getting the touches he should. And Ezekiel Elliott actually runs out my top 5. Hasn't been super spectacular in terms of putting up yards or touchdowns, but he seems to do either or every week. He's playing against the Philly defense that has struggled a little bit. If Dak Prescott and offensive coordinator Kellen Moore can kind of get their shit together, you'll see a lot more opportunities for Zeke around the goal line, and I'm kind of banking on that.
Okay, so not necessarily fantasy related, but in a way it is. Has any team looked more different than the Cowboys from their first 3 games to the next 3 games?
From like a positive to negative standpoint?
Yes.
Different? No. You can make an argument that the Chiefs are kind of starting to dwell like that. You can make an argument for the Cardinals kind of doing the opposite. They looked like shit at the beginning of the year, and then now I think they're starting to like put the pieces together to it. But it's like a day and night difference for Dallas, man.
Yeah, I mean, because there were people ready to give Kellen Moore the reins as a head coach somewhere after 3 weeks.
Yep.
And I mean, I still like Kellen Moore. I think he's still coming into his own as a coordinator. Obviously, this is just year 1, but I mean, yeah, it's crazy how different that team has looked. I mean, the competition is different too. From the teams they played the first 3 weeks to the following 3 weeks, and now a Philly team, divisional game. We'll see. We'll see on
Yeah,
Sunday
we'll
Night
see.
Football.
I don't know if you saw, but after the Packers game, they were asking a couple of the Packers defensive players how they thought they did. And obviously they felt like they did a really good job containing him for like 3.5 quarters. But they had mentioned that he uses, like Kellen Moore, he
Mhm.
uses the same hand signals he did at Boise State. So they
Oh,
went back and they watched Boise State film, and they were able to figure out what play they were running just based on the hand signals.
oh wow, it's interesting. Okay, so my top five receivers is actually a top six, and you'll see why. Um, so my number one, DeAndre Hopkins going against Indy. He's kind of been a little quiet the last couple weeks, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think this is a good spot against Indy. I obviously have Deshaun Watson up there in my top quarterback, so DeAndre Hopkins, obviously, once again, there's always those guys that got to be in the mix for top three spots every single week, and Hopkins is a guy for me at the wide receiver position that is in that position. My number two, playing tonight, Tyreek Hill against Denver. I think this is a get right spot for the entire Kansas City offense. Hopefully, because I put Mahomes as my QB1. But Tyreek Hill against Denver. Number three, and this is why I have six, because this is kind of Julio Jones I have in this spot. I know that there's some injury concern there. I'm not sure if it's certain that he's suiting up. So that's why I have him at three tentatively, assuming he plays. Number four, Cooper Kupp against Atlanta, that same game. I got burned by Cooper Kupp. He's actually my dud from last week, foreshadowing a little bit. But, I mean, Jared Goff only threw for 78 yards. So hopefully Jared Goff can get it going this week against Atlanta, at least a little bit. Playing in a dome, Atlanta's defense is bad. I mean, please, Jared Goff, get the ball to Cooper Kupp in the slot and let him go. Number five, Julian Edelman against the Jets. I'm curious to see how this looks because it doesn't look like Josh Jordan's going to be out there. Philip Dorsett is also nursing an injury, but I think he's going to be able to go. But anyway, I think Julian Edelman is going to be a target horse on Sunday, or this is actually Monday Night Football against the Jets. And I don't know. I think that we could literally see 15 to 17 targets from Julian Edelman. I think he scores a touchdown. And the reason that I said six, so like I said, if Julio does not play for some reason, Michael Thomas against Chicago would go into my top five just because he's Michael Thomas. Once again, Chicago, not a great matchup, as I mentioned, with Alvin Kamara. But Michael Thomas has been kind of, like we mentioned on the show before, Michael Thomas is the one guy in that offense that you feel like you're not going to see a huge drop-off in production, regardless of the quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, it was either going to be Kamara or Thomas kind of taking the dip in production. Teddy Bridgewater has made it the point to get Michael Thomas the ball, and rightly so. I mean, Thomas is ridiculously talented as a wide receiver, so he's definitely been able to maintain numbers, if not improve a little bit after Drew Brees. But no, I see a couple different options in our top five. I actually have Cooper Kupp number one receiver this week, going a little bit bold. I do think Kupp, if not for the entire Rams offense, gets back on track against the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, hopefully. We'll see. We'll see if Sean McVay can work his magic a little bit. I do have Julian Edelman number two against the Jets, like you had mentioned. Dorsett is looking a little bit questionable. It looks like Josh Gordon might not play. Edelman, I thought he had a pretty decent game against the Jets last time around. Monday Night Football, I think that'll help a little bit as well. I have DeAndre Hopkins versus Indy, number three. Everybody's pegging this week to be the week that DeAndre Hopkins returns to, his his throne as wide receiver one in all of fantasy football. I'm definitely expecting big things out of Hopkins. He's in the category as Patrick Mahomes. You got to put him in your top five, if not top three. Mm-hmm. I actually have Michael Gallup as my number four receiver this year. Amari Cooper is questionable. The Cowboys are playing the Eagles Sunday Night Football. Cooper is questionable, but I think if Cooper plays or not, it really won't matter. I think Michael Gallup is going to be, the main receiver in this game. I think if Amari Cooper does play, I don't think he'll be able to perform to the best of his abilities. I don't want to call him a decoy because I still think they're going to throw him some targets. But no, I'm really pegging Michael Gallup. I think whenever Gallup's been healthy, I read where he has the most yards in the league, just like in the games that he's played in. So definitely banking on that, and hopefully we can sprinkle a little touchdown production in there. And then Tyreek Hill, number 5. As long as Tyreek Hill is one of the fastest human beings on earth, I can never doubt his abilities as a fantasy receiver, especially with Andy Reid as the play caller and Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I hope a lot of this comes true because a lot of the guys on that list I have in various leagues. So I need a big game from Cooper Kupp. So
yeah.
Once again, that's not really on him. It's on Jared Goff. I need Jared Goff to get right in the dome.
Both domes.
Yeah, in his own dome, but also playing in the dome. Okay, so top 5 tight ends. With how volatile a position this is, I can only see maybe one difference we're going to have. I'm going to predict that we have one difference.
I'm going to pick we have 3, actually.
Really?
A win a little different. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, I guess you would know how bold you went, so I'm playing it safe this week. I feel like these are, 5 out of the 6 guys that are at the top of the list. So my number 1 is actually Austin Hooper. He's gotten 80 yards and or a touchdown every single week this year. So he's been about as good of a bet at the tight end position as you can have, along with my number 2 guy, George Kittle, going against Washington. This is a prime matchup. Kittle's a top 2 play, regardless of who they're playing against. But right here against Washington, Travis Kelce, number 3 against Denver. Travis Kelce, regardless of who they're playing, once again, is going to be a top 3 play. Coming into the year, was Kelce, Kittle, Ertz. And, Austin Hooper, at least with his production to this point, has kind of taken over for Ertz in that aspect. Evan Ingram, my number 4, going against Arizona. I am very intrigued in a weird way by this Giants-Arizona game, as you can tell, because I've mentioned 3 players now that are in that game already. So, I don't know. There might be a decent bit of fantasy value in that game. My number 5, Mark Andrews, going against Seattle. I had a little bit of a toss-up here between him and Ertz. Zach Ertz, and you kind of touched on it at the beginning of the season, maybe worrying a little bit about his fantasy production with the inclusion of Dallas Goedert more into the offense. Zach Ertz hasn't quite been Zach Ertz, and whether that's the Philly offense in general or whatever the reason may be, I think Mark Andrews is actually a safer bet here at number 5 against Seattle than Ertz on Sunday Night Football against Dallas.
Yeah, I think I kind of have to agree with you on that. Ertz, while he's been a serviceable tight end, and at the tight end position where it's such a drop off from like the top tier talent to like the middle of the pack. Ertz is definitely still one of the guys you need to roll out in your lineup every week, but I don't think we've seen him put up the numbers he absolutely can. In that Philadelphia offense. So we do have a couple differences in our top 5. Majority of it the same. Yeah. I have Kittle number 1 against the Redskins. Like you mentioned, he's always a top 2 play. For me, he's not number 2. Yes. Evan Ingram is my number 2 tight end coming into this week. The Cardinals are the worst team as far as fantasy points allowed to tight ends goes. I think Evan Ingram being healthy is a great sign for Daniel Jones and the rest of the Giants offense as well. I actually have Travis Kelce number 3 in his matchup against Denver tonight. Like you said, Kelce's just one of those guys you have to roll out, regardless of the matchup. He's still Travis Kelce. He's at least still going to get the looks from Mahomes. I have Mark Andrews number 4 against the Seattle Seahawks. What a year he's having. What a year. He's been performing, out of his mind in the Ravens offense that uses 3 different tight ends.
Except when he tried to hurdle and need the ball out of his own hands for a fumble.
Yep, except for that. But, regardless, he's been playing really well. And then Austin Hooper, number 5 against the Rams. I think the Rams might be doing a little bit better job, containing the tight end position. But still, Austin Hooper, like you mentioned, putting up bonker numbers at the tight end position. So you definitely have to include him in there. I do want to say I was this close to putting Hunter Henry in my top 5.
Yeah,
I really want.
Yep.
I just want to see another week of the production I know he can put up, and then I'll be more than happy putting him in there.
Yeah, I said I flipped a coin between. Who's number 5? I'm already forgetting. Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews against Seattle, or Kelce, or not Kelce. Ertz against the Cowboys. But Hunter Henry was like right on the cusp there for me too. Just seeing what he did against the Steelers, like wondering if he was even at full health for that game, and now another week. So, yeah, if we did a top 7, those would be the 2 guys that I would include.
Yeah.
would be Ertz and Henry onto the list. But yeah, Hunter Henry's a beast. Like, people forget that because of how often he is injured, but when he's on the field, he's very productive.
Yeah, completely agree. Hopefully he can stay healthy.
Yeah.
He'll be a diamond in the rough because I know he was on waivers for the longest time this year just because he was hurt. So I think a lot of people will benefit just picking him off of the waivers.
Yeah, I was able to stash him in an IR spot. So
Nice.
yeah, they haven't had their bye week, but so I'm only rostering one tight end now on that team. I'm going to pick up one at some point because I think their bye week is like 12 or something like that. So, but okay, yeah, I mean, so we had the same players, just a different order. I thought you meant you were going to have guys that weren't on my list.
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah.
Little different order.
Yeah.
But at the tight end position, like I said, it's kind of the same guys every week. It's just depending on the order you put them in.
Mm-hmm. I mean, once again, the only inclusions that you could possibly have would be like Ertz, Hunter Henry. I mean, if you still want to bank on O.J. Howard, but no way.
Hell,
I'm curious to see if he's even going to be a Buccaneer. They're insisting that they're not trading him, but we'll see. Okay, so let's talk about some waiver wire ads that we think that. Well, I mean, I know it's Thursday now, but we feel like you should have made. if not, maybe this could help going forward for Week 8 and so on and so forth. At the quarterback position, really not much out there that I was looking at least in my league, and. So I went with Matt Stafford here. He's on 56% of Yahoo leagues, so just over half. You mentioned he had only 10 points against Green Bay, which once again, let me get closer to the microphone. Should have been more, but the refs kind of put him in the bad position. They should have had the ball at least one more time. But I don't know. There's just something about that Matt Stafford Kenny Golladay connection that I think is just going to continue to get better. And I know Detroit's sitting there at 2-2-1, but they look like a pretty decent football team. I think they're going to be pretty competitive the entire season. I think the NFC North in general is going to be a very good division as the season continues.
Well, shit, look at their 2 losses, man. They forced Patrick Mahomes to drive down the field at the very end of the game, and then they forced Aaron Rodgers to basically do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they forced Aaron Rodgers and the refs to beat him on one drive. Okay, so running back position. I went with Jamal Williams. There was another guy here that I put just in case you also said Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams is owned in 57% of Yahoo leagues. I'm curious to see if it's like the hot hand approach in Green Bay or what, because I'm actually a big fan of Aaron Jones. I think that they should be feeding him, but Jamal Williams was really the guy against Detroit, and he went off. He was also actually foreshadowing a little bit my stud of the week at the running back position. And to my understanding, they're going to try to keep both involved. And, reading the fantasy notes that I did about them, it seems like they're both going to be, viable plays as flex RB3s. So I think Jamal Williams is definitely worth a speculative ad at the very least. And just to throw in another guy owned in less than 50% of leagues, Darrell Henderson with the Rams. I mean, we know what's going on with Todd Gurley. It's no secret, ever since the end of their playoff run last year into this season, he's not the same Todd Gurley. And we saw Brown kind of get the first shot at replacing him. He was not productive at all on Sunday. Henderson was pretty productive when he got his touches, and I think that he is going to be continued to see that role increase and essentially groomed as the next guy behind Todd Gurley. My wide receiver, we kind of already mentioned, he's banged up. Should he play? Should he not play? I like this even going forward if he doesn't play. Philip Dorsett owned in 38% of the leagues. If he does suit up, it's going to be without Josh Gordon. So you're looking at really just him behind Edelman, essentially, in terms of options to throw to, other than obviously James White out of the backfield. Yeah. But Philip Dorsett, we saw firsthand as Steeler fans what he's capable of. I mean, this is a former first-round pick. I am actually a pretty big fan of Philip Dorsett. I was a fan coming out. I think that he can be very good, and obviously playing with Tom Brady helps as well. Not necessarily throwing the deep ball, but getting him the ball quick and letting him just make the play. So like I said, if you're looking for a guy that's owned in less than 50% of the leagues, this guy's actually owned in less than 40%. So I don't think it's a bad dart to throw. Once again, if Josh Gordon's not going to be out there, and making sure that Dorsett is. And finally wrapping up, tight end position is so hard to look for when it comes to the waiver wire, man. I mean, I'm just looking at You
I
know?
feel like we might have the same guy.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you mention his teammate in this show already?
Yes.
Dawson Knox.
Oh, no. Okay.
Okay. Dawson Knox owned in only 19% of fantasy leagues. You mentioned Josh Allen going against Miami. The Buffalo offense should be actually able to do something and not completely rely just on their defense in this game. I think Dawson Knox is an okay dart throw if you're looking if you're picking up a tight end off waivers, you're obviously in a pretty bad position for this week. Dawson Knox, you're looking for guys that are going against bad teams, I feel like, at this point. Going against Miami, you really can't ask for more. Looking for the tight end position, the most volatile position on the waiver wire. Like, what more can you ask for than a bad matchup?
Right. Yeah. It's such a dice roll when it comes to the tight end position. So I really feel like no waiver ad suggestion can be a bad one.
Yeah.
Just because of the potential dart you can hit on the board, metaphorically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So my waiver wire quarterback is going to be Jacoby Brissett. I feel like I talk about him every week on the show, and he's still owned in less than 50% of the ESPN leagues. He's averaging 17 points a game. So on an average day, Jacoby Brissett is probably putting up more than one or two of the fantasy quarterbacks you have on your team right now.
Yeah.
So he's going into what seems like is going to be a pass-friendly shootout. At least that's what the billing is making it up to be this week against the Houston Texans. My running back position, a little bit iffy on this, but decided to roll with it. Adrian Peterson owned in about 55% of the leagues. The Washington running back stable is banged up right now. Adrian Peterson looks like he's basically the only guy healthy. Case Keenum took over the reins in that offense after Dwayne Haskins kind of just shit the bed a little bit.
And the reins back.
Yeah, he's like, nah, pass. I think the Redskins are kind of going to try to mold themselves as like a run-first team moving forward, just because their quarterback situation is such in shambles right now. My wide receiver is actually going to be another guy owned in less than 40% of the leagues as well, but I went Auden Tate, wide receiver for the Bengals.
That was my guy last week.
Yeah, so you always see, the number 2 receiver on a team typically step up. We've seen that with Will Fuller. We've seen that with Deontay Johnson, even with the Steelers a little bit this year. So Auden Tate owned in about 34% of leagues. So 3 out of the 5 weeks he's played, he's seen double-digit fantasy points. Tyler Boyd, you have to respect what he can do, obviously. So I think as long as AJ Green is out, Auden Tate is going to fill that Tyler Boyd role that Boyd had last year whenever AJ Green was still healthy and playing. And my tight end, owned in about 12.4% of leagues, is going to be Darren Fells, the Texans tight end. So he scored 12-plus fantasy points the last 3 out of 4 weeks. I feel like that's as good of a dice roll as any other guys you're probably going to find on the waiver wire. But like you said, such a depleted position, man.
Yeah. That's the only other guy that I saw that I considered.
Yeah.
And I chose to go against, playing Miami as opposed to the production that we have seen, like you mentioned, from Fells.
So the only worry with Fells' production that I have is that it's basically touchdown dependent.
Mm-hmm.
1 week he scored like 16 fantasy points. He had 2 catches, both were touchdowns.
Yeah.
So while you can look at the bright side and say, hey, guys like Fuller and Hopkins, they're opening up the field for Fells to catch balls underneath. On the same token, if Fells isn't scoring touchdowns every week, he's not going to be that viable starter, and hence why he's probably only owned in about 1 out of every 10 leagues.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so last week, obviously, every week you're going to have studs, you're going to have duds, guys that help or hurt you that you weren't expecting. Studs for week 5. My quarterback, Kirk Cousins. Up until this point, the Vikings have been very...
week 6?
Yes.
Okay.
Week 6, sorry. I didn't change the number from when we put out the notes onto Twitter when we weren't able to do a show. That's why.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so sorry, week 6. Kirk Cousins at the quarterback position. As we mentioned, people probably weren't expecting a lot of that out of him at this point because the Vikings had been so run-heavy. He had his own receivers calling him out, for God's sake. So, but Kirk Cousins came up big last week at the running back position, as I already alluded to. Jamal Williams having pretty much a career day when everyone thought that Aaron Jones would be the number one back going into that game. Jamal Williams has pretty much in one game turned it into either a hot hand approach or at least a committee where LaFleur now wants to kind of go to a split in the backfield, and so they're both going to be touching the ball. At the wide receiver position, this is my guy right here. I'm so glad that I finally talked about him. I could have said him in past weeks, but I just didn't. Terry McLaurin from Washington. I don't know how he's going to continue to do it for that terrible team. But Scary Terry, once again, like I said, I could have brought him up already, but I hadn't to this point, so he deserves it this week. Got to go against the Dolphins, so he actually got to win a game as well. But he just continues to score touchdowns and be productive for a team that otherwise is very unproductive. So he's a stud. Tight end. This pretty much all came on one catch. But once again, you look at the tight end position, it's like most of the guys that do well, you were expecting to do well. So yeah. Ricky Seals-Jones scored a touchdown for the Browns. So if for some reason you were that desperate and played Ricky Seals-Jones, you got 13 points out of him. So...
Dude, if I ever get to a point where I'm starting Ricky Seals-Jones in things,
I'm done playing fantasy football.
Yes. Yeah, but no, it'd be like that sometimes, man. Whether injuries, just bye weeks, or anything else like that, it'd be like that. So definitely understand. Matt Ryan is going to be my stud of the week, man. Talk about finally getting their shit together as far as in his passing game goes. Scored 30 plus fantasy points the week prior. Came right back out. I think he scored 38. Scored 38 for me. It's definitely nice to see Devontae Freeman going in a passing game again. I think that's helped Ryan a lot. But for sure, Ryan had a really rocky start to 2019 as far as fantasy production goes, but he's definitely turned the corner. Running back, look no further than Pittsburgh's own James Conner. Had a monster game. Like you mentioned, I think he had 7 catches from Devlin Hodges. All the all-purpose yards you could think of, was pretty much the main reason Pittsburgh's offense went during that game. So really good to see that. Stud for wide receiver, Stephon Diggs. I can't believe I'm saying that, just because I've developed this internal just kind of thing for Stephon Diggs, but you got to give credit where credit's due. Diggs finally pops off. What do you have? 3 touchdowns last week, over 100 yards.
Yep.
42 fantasy points. The next highest for a receiver is 26. So, almost doubling the, production of the second highest scoring receiver. Granted, I don't think that happens again this week or at all for the rest of the season, but, for week 6, you got to give him the crown. And then tight end, my guy's going to be Hunter Henry. Really awesome to see him back there out again. I try to look for a guy outside of the top 3. Like you had mentioned, you're always going to have those kind of names. So Hunter Henry, as long as he's healthy, he's a beast, and it was actually good to see him out there and playing.
Right. Okay, so on the reverse end of that, you look at the duds. And I don't even know, I pretty much just want to put Tampa Bay's entire offense on here pretty much every week. Because you just keep expecting more from Bruce Arians' group. But Jameis Winston's my guy at quarterback, and O.J. Howard's my guy at tight end, just to foreshadow a little bit and get that out of the way. Realistically, I just want to put Mike Evans as receiver too, but I didn't. At running back, Joe Mixon, and it's not even really his fault. It's the Bengals.
It's such a shitty situation for him because we know how talented he is.
Yeah. We saw it. He was somehow 4th in the league in rushing last year. But that offensive line is so bad. You can stack the box against them because Andy Dalton hasn't been good either. They're missing A.J. Green. It's just a bad situation, like you said, for Joe Mixon. So to even, put him on here, it kind of sucks. But as a Joe Mixon owner, I'm getting burned by him, so I'm seeing it firsthand. And at wide receiver, once again, a guy that I really can't put at fault here, but Cooper Kupp was expected to be a top 5 play last week, as he is this week, so hopefully they actually bounce back against Atlanta. But, man, terrible game against San Fran. Jared Goff threw for 78 yards, and not a good portion of that was to Cooper Kupp anyway, so Cooper Kupp is my dud.
Yeah, I think you kind of put Robert Woods in that same category. While Robert Woods hasn't been on the same tier, people hold Cooper Kupp too. I think any Rams offensive player last week was a complete dud. You can kind of put him in that same category that you wanted to put the Buccaneers in.
Right. I mean, yeah, Robert Woods ran for a touchdown. So, I mean, in a way, I guess
Yeah,
he kind
dude,
of did something there.
I'm like, okay. I'm like, he's got 6 points right off the bat. I'm like, they're gonna involve him and fucking goose egg the rest of the game, dude.
Yeah. So who were your guys at the other positions?
So my duds. Quarterback is going to be Baker Mayfield, and let me take one of my earphones out. Let me go on a rant. How are you going to wear a headband? Clap back at the media. Say you guys don't suck, and then go out and throw 3 interceptions on almost a week-to-week basis. I don't get it. The talent is there. You have Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., David Njoku, Nick Chubb running the football. I don't understand how this happens. I really don't. So, as a former Baker Mayfield owner, it sucks to see that. But definitely a dud for me, last week. At the running back position, you already talked about him, Joe Mixon. Not his fault. One of the most talented dudes in the world, but a banged up offensive line and a underperforming quarterback in Andy Dalton certainly isn't helping things. Things just look really bad in Cincinnati right now. It's kind of a fantasy dumpster, if you will. And granted, I just suggested Auden Tate as a waiver wire pickup, so look at me contradicting myself. But anyways, receiver position, I had Cooper Kupp as well. I also had Robert Woods in the mix. Hence from the last 5 minutes I just talked to you about, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp just kind of being expected to do more, so hopefully they're able to bounce back. Tight end, I had Zach Ertz. 7 points isn't going to cut it, especially where he was being drafted. Top 3 rounds for sure. It's not even Dallas Goedert is stealing all of his looks. It's just that he hasn't been able to produce.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I said when we were talking about the top 5 plays. It's kind of weird to leave out Ertz because at the beginning of the year, you're talking about, Kelsey's number 1 tight end. Who's number 2? Is it Kittle or Ertz? And now you can clearly see it's Kittle, and is Ertz even number 3?
Right. So, yeah. The doors opened up, and granted, I don't think we all expected Ertz and Kittle and Kelsey to go out and score 25 points every week. That'd be kind of unrealistic for us to expect, but. Damn, you definitely expect more than 3 catches for 40 yards from a guy like Zach Ertz. He should be the prominent pass catcher in that offense.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, so by position, your must start this week, and it's probably going to be somebody we already talked about. Obviously, if he has them as a must start, they're probably in your top 5 plays. Yeah. So at the quarterback position, even though I didn't have this guy at number 1. Because I always have to have Pat Mahomes there. I talked about him. He was my number 5. I said that there's a lot of fantasy intrigue in this game for some reason to me. Kyler Murray against the Giants. That's my guy.
Yeah, he's going to be a must play. I thought about putting him there, but I ended up putting Deshaun Watson against Holtz. But I feel like it's 1A or 1B this week, honestly. I feel like both quarterbacks should easily eclipse 30 points this week if everything goes to plan.
Okay. Running back, do I have to say it?
Nope. Nope. I can run and put his jersey on really quick if you want me to.
I have his jersey as well. I have the Giants color rush.
Ooh, solid. Yeah, I just have the regular home blues, but dude, the Giants color rush jerseys are nice.
Yeah. I like the throwback look. That's the reason.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously, Saquon Barkley. I don't even know if we actually said his name. We just kind of said, do I have to say it? And, yeah. But, obviously some other names that we mentioned in the top 5 would be, Leonard Fournette playing against Cincy. That's as good of a matchup as you can get for a running back.
That's a pound-the-table matchup for me, man. But yeah. I think he could probably hit over 150 yards on the ground, really.
Mm-hmm. At the wide receiver position, I hate to come right back and say it, but Cooper Kupp against Atlanta, please, Jared Goff. I'm just going to keep... I'm saying a prayer tonight that Jared Goff gets it done on Sunday. For everybody involved. For Cooper Kupp, for fantasy owners of both Goff and Kupp, for Brandon Cooks, for Robert Woods, for Gerald Everett, whoever, for that offense. And then at the tight end position, I'm going to go... I'm stuck between 2 guys here. Austin Hooper was my number 1 just because of the production he's putting up so far this year. But between Kittle and Ingram, I was kind of stuck here. You mentioned that Arizona's given up the most points to tight ends, although I don't want to keep pounding the table on this game, so I'm going to go Kittle against Washington.
It's okay. If you want to pound the table for it, I will. I've put Evan Ingram as my must start for tight end every week. Most of the weeks I've been successful with that, so I'm going to ride that going against an Arizona defense that just can't figure out how to guard tight ends, let alone probably the most athletic tight end in the league in Evan Ingram. So I'll definitely pound the table for that, and then I'm right there with you for Cooper Kupp as the must start receiver. I mean, dude had 17 targets 2 weeks ago. Over 35 fantasy points that week. So we know what he can do. We know he's probably the most versatile receiver in that wide receiver group. I know that Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks have their own roles, but Cooper Kupp is definitely the go-to guy for Jared Goff. So I think he will bounce back. And regardless of who they're playing, I think Cooper Kupp is a must start every week going forward.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I think that pretty much wraps up everything that we got to say this week.
Yeah, really vanilla episode, but good content.
Yeah.
I think that's what people kind of look for at the end of the day. So
it's good to be back.
Next week, it's really good to be back. I hope we have a little bit more variety. To our ice cream chuck other than vanilla, but good stuff. Good stuff as always, man.
Yeah, and the thing was too, I was obviously hopeful about getting back to do it this week, but I wasn't, I didn't have my voice until Saturday or Sunday, so it was kind of still up in the air if this week was even going to be a possibility. So now obviously we know next week is going to be a thing, so we have the full week to prepare and everything. So we'll be back and better than ever next week. Until then, reminder that Around the 412 is part of the Pod Hub Network. You can go to Pod Hub Network, check us out, check out all the other shows. We're sponsored by Keats Barbershop. Keats Barbershop is located at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. Open 10 to 7, Tuesday through Friday, Saturday 9 to 4. Every Tuesday, $5 off for military personnel, first responders, and nurses. Owned and operated by Christian Circle, who he himself served in the military, so it's obviously something very important to him. Rocking Around the 412, year 2 is back. You got about 2 months to get involved. Go check out our pinned tweet at Around the 412 on Twitter, and it'll take you right to the GoFundMe link. You can read our mission, see what's going on, share it, donate if you can. Any little bit helps. Once you read the mission, I think a lot of more people are going to want to get involved in what we're doing. I'm really excited about doing it again. So other than that, I think that kind of wraps everything up. And it's been Smitty and Donnie bringing you the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.